Welcome to Nice and Blunt. My name is Adam Mariancho, and we are live here on YouTube. What day is it? Today is June 8th, Thursday, around 4:25 p.m. And there's some big news today regarding Dalvin Cook and the Minnesota Vikings. As we can see here, Dalvin Cook is expected to be is pretty much gone. He's pretty much already gone from the Vikings. Yes, Tom Pelissero reports the Vikings are expected to release Dalvin Cook. That's the headline I was looking for specifically. But before we get into where Dalvin's going to land, I think we will get back to him in just a second. But let's take a look at our friend Alexander Mattison, shall we? Let's take a look at who he is, how he's played in the past, and what can we expect from him moving forward now that he's the starting running back of the Vikings. So this is his player profiler page. He's 5'11", 221. So he should be able to hold up to a big workload, but he's not the fastest player, only a 4.67 40, and his speed score is only in the 39th percentile, so there may be a little bit of burst that you might feel is lacking from Mattison. But he's only 25 years old. He's going to have a birthday coming up soon, so he hasn't had a ton of touches, and durability shouldn't be a problem. But let's just take a look at what he's done in the past. This is Dalvin Cook's Pro Football Reference page, and from this we'll be able to gauge what games we need to look at, because he missed 2 games in 2019, another 3 games or so in 2020, and then in 2021 he missed 4 games, and in one of them he also got hurt. So the weeks that we need to look at, I've written them down. In 2021, let's move over to Mattison's stats. This is what's most interesting. We can't really look at last year in 2022 because Dalvin Cook played a full season, and there wasn't really in a single game here where Mattison saw more than 10, 11 touches. That was week 17. That game doesn't really count. So last year is not the best metric to look at when it comes to what to expect from Mattison in this Vikings offense. We really need to look at 2021. That was the season where he had 5 games where he heavily contributed, 4 as a starter, and then in week 12, Dalvin Cook went down. So let's just take a look at these stats specifically. In week 3 of 2021, he had 26 touches, 112 rushing yards, 8 targets, 6 receptions, 59 receiving yards. Very, very good game from Mattison, even though he didn't get in the end zone. That's what we're looking for. In week 5, he got another start, another 113 yards rushing, and he caught all 7 of his targets for 40 yards and a touchdown. That was one of his best fantasy games of his career. So that's the ceiling that we could be getting from Mattison. That's definitely over 20 fantasy points. But if we look at week 12, where he filled in about half the game for Dalvin Cook, he scored another touchdown, but wasn't too effective, only 3 yards per carry on 7 rush attempts, 21 yards. And his receptions started to fall off a lot. Compared to those first 2 games, there wasn't another game for him where he got more than 4 targets, 3 catches in the start, filling in for Dalvin. So it started to drop off a little bit, but the one concerning stat here is the efficiency. Like, there isn't a single game with over 4.5 yards per carry, and that's kind of what you should expect from Mattison in general. So it wasn't just these games, it was also a few in 2019 where he filled in. Oh no, excuse me, it was 2020 that he filled in weeks 5, 6, and 17. That's what we're looking at. 5, 6, and 17. So another game with 112 rushing yards. That's kind of a common reoccurring theme for him, but 3 catches, 24 yards, no touchdown. The following week, he got the full start, but only 10 touches, 2.6 yards per carry. He was not efficient at all. And then in week 17, kind of a game that doesn't really count. 21 touches for 95, a touchdown, 3 for 3 for 50 receiving yards, and a second touchdown in that game. So that was actually his best fantasy game of his career, a week 17 matchup that very few people were able to start him. So overall, when he has filled in for Cook, it's been very rare. And there are some games where he isn't super amazing. If he doesn't go over 100 yards rushing, then he does become pretty touchdown dependent. and it's kind of unlikely that he gets you multiple scores, but it is possible. So that's what we're looking at with Mattison. And I did put this into metric form. Here we go. This is the stat. These are the stats that are most important for Mattison. In those 8 games as the Minnesota starter, seeing a 21 touch workload, 3.5 of those were catches, so pretty solid from a PPR standpoint. An average of 107 total yards per game. That's really good. That's an elite floor. But 4.2 yards per carry is not really what we're looking for. But if he can repeat this 0.75 touchdowns per game, that's 3 touchdowns every 4 matchups, that would really carry him. His average in those 8 starts was 17 fantasy points per game. So there is an elite ceiling where Mattison is a top 5 running back. It is possible that he is that league winner, especially if you drafted him, really late as he was going a few months ago. You could have gotten him still at like round 9, round 10. Now it's like round 7. And then with this news, he's going to catapult into like round 5, maybe round 4. So Mattison is definitely going up the board. But I guess there is a scenario where you can be excited enough to talk yourself into taking him round 2. That is a possibility that he is that valuable. But before you do that, I just want to hold our horses a little bit and show you one other metric that I think is important to note. These are Dalvin Cook's stats last year in 17 full healthy games in the Kevin O'Connell offense. So as we can see, the volume has already started to creep down from 21 touches to 17.8. So that already diminishes the production a little bit, but the receptions also dropped off by more than a full catch per game. 2.3 is a lot less reliable than 3.5. So that is a little bit concerning, but an average of 86.3 total yards per game, that's about 20 fewer. That's already 2 fantasy points you're losing. And the yards per carry wasn't significantly different. In fact, it was actually better than Mattison, 4.4 compared to Mattison's 4.2 as the Viking starter. So a little bit concerning. And then most concerning of all, that touchdown rate fell to 0.59. Still pretty solid. 10 touchdowns in 17 games is a pretty good floor. But as we can see, it's just not that top 5 ceiling. Dalvin Cook only put up 13.3 fantasy points last year. He was the RB11 on a per game basis. So that is something that I think should remind you of the floor and the low end of the projection for Mattison and maybe temper some of your expectations. It's not that he's going to be bad, but I think he's more of an RB2 than an RB1. So even though I am more optimistic about Mattison, I'm not bumping him up into my top 10. If anything, I view him in the same tier as Joe Mixon. I think Miles Sanders, also a 3-down running back, a player to compare in the same vein. I do think he's more valuable than Aaron Jones because Aaron Jones is in a solid committee. But once you get to like Joe Mixon and players above him, I think it's a little bit more of a toss-up. I'm hesitant to rank Mattison higher than 14. I think I'd personally rather have Mixon. We've seen him produce longer in the NFL. And guys going above him like Etienne, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Najee Harris, I think have a higher ceiling. I think they play on some better offenses. I'm actually not super excited about the Vikings this season. I don't think they're going to be as good than they were last year. They won a lot of one-score games very close, and Dalvin Cook was a bit of a home run hitter in many of those instances. He had like a big, massive run that he popped to the house, and if Mattison is unable to do that, then I'm worried they won't be in as good position to score, and the points overall are going to come down. So those are all the reasons I'm a little bit worried about Mattison. The Kevin O'Connell offense favors the pass in the red zone, and I think those touchdown numbers are going to look closer to like 9 or 10 this season than the pace that he was on previously as the starter that would suggest maybe like 13, 14 touchdowns. If that happens, then Mattison is definitely worth the draft pick in like the 5th, 4th round. But I just think it's a little too optimistic to project. There's also one last factor that makes me a little bit worried about Alexander Mattison, and that is it's technically a committee up for grabs. It's not like he has a massive contract. Let me pull up his the Minnesota Vikings contracts at the running back position real quick. Here they are. It's not like he got a big deal. I want to say he got like $3-4 million guaranteed. Yeah, Mattison is only a $3.5 million per season type of contract, and he only got a 2-year deal. Let's see if it's guaranteed next season. For the most part, it's guaranteed, but it does kind of. There's a little bit that they can get themselves out of. Only 6.3 of that $7 million is fully guaranteed. So it's not like he's getting a huge contract, and that investment kind of concerns me a little bit. I think he's going to have to earn his spot a little bit because they did draft a rookie behind him in Dwayne McBride that I like a lot. Let's head over to Player Profiler and type in Dwayne McBride. He's not like amazing. Honestly, there aren't that many stats here, but he also has a pretty solid build, 5'10", 215. They drafted him in the 7th round, though, so maybe I shouldn't be worried at all. But his stats in college are actually pretty solid. He played for UAB. That's not like the best college, not the best conference, but the last season he had as a senior, third-year senior, 1,713 rushing yards, 19 touchdowns, only 2 catches, so he's not a threat on third down. But that was the second straight season that he had like a lot of touchdowns. I'm worried that Dwayne McBride could steal a lot of those touchdowns that we are hoping go to Alexander Mattison. It's not guaranteed. Maybe I'm just a little bit too concerned, but it is a possibility that this job is a little more up for grabs than everyone assumes. And that's the only red flag, but obviously I might be overblowing this. It's possible that Mattison is like really, really legit. So that's just something to keep in mind. But with all of those factors considered now, I think we can move on from this news and we can head over to the rest of the video. Part 2 is going to be, there we go. Part 2 will be the mock draft that we're going to do on Underdog. So I'm still getting kind of used to all these Streamlabs settings, but I think we finally figured it out. We are on to the mock draft. And if you haven't drafted on Underdog before, you can use my code Nice and Blunt on sign up to get your first $100 deposit matched dollar for dollar. So that's a pretty good deal. Remember, code Nice and Blunt at sign up. The link should be in the description. And with that, we will get things going. So if you're interested in drafting with me, do not hit the button yet. Let me just remind you of some of these rules. It is a tournament setting that's a little bit more weighted towards week 15, 16, and 17. It is a half PPR format, but really what's most important to keep in mind is the roster construction. 3 wide receivers, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 1 tight end, 1 flex, 10 bench spots. That's the setup, and wide receiver really needs to be at the top of your mind as we go through the draft. So there's a bit of a delay. I want to say like 8-10 seconds. So if you hit it now, then I will hit it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we should be able to hop into the same draft. We're still waiting for 1 person, 2 people. There is a couple spots available here if you're interested, but this thing should fill up pretty quickly and we'll get things going. But yep, there it is. It's full. How you doing, Goat Mode? Welcome to the chat. Welcome to the video. I got pick 9. I've been getting a lot of late picks these days, but if there's one spot I like in the second half, I do think 9 is pretty good because you can usually predict these spots 10, 11, 12, what they're going to do at the turn. And you can usually get a good player fall to you consistently. Usually there's some good value, at least in that specific round, if a player is falling. And you want them, pick 9 or like pick 4 is usually the spot where you're most likely to get them. Once you hit pick 3, pick 10, it's a little bit less likely that, that player that's dropping like 8, 9 spots drops 10th spot. So that is one aspect I do like about pick 9. But I think we're gonna hammer a wide receiver a ton. I think that's something to consider, and we're going to keep in mind where Mattison is going, but we're not going to take him in round 4. We're going to hope to get him in round 5. I think that's the fair value, but it's going to be interesting to see where Dalvin Cook goes. That could be the steal if people are like super afraid of him, because I forgot to mention it. Let's just take a look at Dalvin Cook real quick. The Broncos are reportedly interested in signing Dalvin Cook, and that would be a really, really interesting spot. I've mentioned their schedule late in the season. They have some elite league-winning potential matchups. If last year's stats on running back, on rushing defenses holds true, the Denver Broncos have the Chargers, Detroit, New England, and then the Chargers again in the fantasy playoffs weeks 14 through 17. That could be league-winning. So maybe Dalvin Cook is going to go there. Maybe that's the best spot for him. But the front runner, I think, would be Miami. And that's also a pretty good spot, but that's much more of a committee with Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, all in the mix there. And I am a little bit worried about that scenario. But we're going to take CeeDee Lamb. And I do believe there's a tier break at wide receiver following Lamb. Definitely some question marks with Devontae Adams right now, with Jimmy Garoppolo up in the air. And hopefully one of these running backs falls back around to us. That's not guaranteed, but it is possible. And if not, then we might get our favorite running back in round 2. And maybe we'll go wide receiver again. But let's just take a look at this draft board. Eckler goes at 10. But other than that, the only really interesting pick, I think, in this first round would be A.J. Brown at 6. I personally prefer Stephon Diggs a little bit more, a little bit less of a committee, and it's not looking like DeAndre Hopkins is going to end up in Buffalo, so I still think Diggs is a safer investment than A.J. Brown. But following our CeeDee Lamb, it's Eckler, Bijan, Garrett Wilson, Nick Chubb. Damn, Nick Chubb goes off. I was hoping to get Nick Chubb on our team, but we might go wide receiver. Yeah, I am personally a very big fan of Jalen Waddle, and if he's our wide receiver 2, then that position just really opens up for us, and we have a lot of opportunity to shift to running back and other skill players if we aren't as pressed to focus on wide receiver the rest of the draft. Having Jalen Waddle, I think, is really solid as your wide receiver 2. It also opens up the Tua Tagovailoa stack. That's really valuable if he can stay healthy. But Waddle, in my opinion, is a top 10 wide receiver. I'd almost kind of want to have Waddle over Garrett Wilson, but I think him and Amon-Ra are neck and neck. I think I prefer Waddle over St. Brown, to be completely honest with you. There's just a little bit more after the catch usually, and with him and Tyreek Hill getting a year older, it's possible that, and boy, if there's one strategy I do not like, it's taking Travis Kelce round 1, Patrick Mahomes round 2. I can justify Kelce at pick 8. I think that's the earliest I'm willing to go, but I'd rather have CD over Kelce, and especially in these best ball formats, I am praying that Mahomes somehow falls back to me in round 3. That's probably not going to happen, but taking him at 17, boy, it just really limits you from grabbing some of the value at wide receiver. Like, it's just so difficult to make that work, and it's not a unique strategy. We are drafting in the Puppy, which is a tournament, and you need a unique roster in order to pay off. If you're telling me that the Travis Kelce Mahomes stack is really that valuable, there is literally, like, I want to say a team in 70% of drafts that has this same combo. You see it so often, and I just don't think it's worth it. If there's one big landmine to avoid, it's the Kelce Mahomes combo in rounds 1 and 2. That is my personal opinion. I have drafted Kelce a couple times just to test it out, but I usually don't like having him on my team in round 1. And when I do get Mahomes, it's like if he falls to me in round 2 or late round, early round 3 or late round 2. But I just can't justify it at pick 17. We're already seeing not another quarterback being drafted in round 2. This is already not paying off for Team 8, given quarterback is already being devalued by a significant margin. But after him, we see Taylor, who I don't really love, given Saquon is still on the board. I get the argument for him, but I'll be honest, I'd rather go with Tony Pollard, and I even think Breece Hall might be more valuable than Jonathan Taylor. I just love the talent with Breece Hall, and Taylor really scared me last season. Given the rookie quarterback that's also going to steal a lot of rushing volume, I find it hard to believe that Taylor will put up another 1,500 plus yards and like 15 touchdowns. If anything, one of those is going to drop off kind of significantly. So Taylor, I think, is still going a little too high. Definitely prefer Saquon, but Olave, I think, is fair value. Derrick Henry, I get it in round 2, but given his age, his injury concern, I think in round 3 it's a little bit safer. Devontae Smith, though, T. Higgins, I think are in the same tier as Chris Olave. Not in the same tier, though, as Jalen Waddle. That's why it's so important to grab Jalen Waddle if you can. Very hard to replicate him moving forward. But I'm going to fill you in. There was, I teased it a little bit on, whatchamacallit, the community tab. I asked you a question, community poll. Which wide receiver do you believe is the best value in round 3? And I agree with you guys. Last I checked, Calvin Ridley was the winner, and damn it, he goes off. But fuck. In the 3rd round, I love Calvin Ridley, man, especially because it opens the door for that Trevor Lawrence stack. And if you can get him in round 7, he's been fallen. Holy shit, he is so valuable. But Breece Hall has fallen to pick 33, and there is not a running back in that top 10 that I think is worthy of the same 3rd round pick. Breece Hall is my boy, one of my highest drafted players. And I just need to remind you about what Breece Hall did in an offense with Zach Wilson. Last season, Breece Hall was fucking amazing, man. Like, week 1 wasn't really amazing, but he had 9 targets, 6 catches, 38 receptions, 38 receiving yards, excuse me. He was pretty solid. Week 2, still in a bit of a split with Michael Carter, 7 for 50, only 1 target, 1 catch for 10 yards, and a touchdown, though. So for fantasy-wise, he wasn't that bad. But then it started to open up. 8 for 39, 11 targets, 6 catches, 53 yards, and then 17 for 66 and a touchdown, 18 for 97 and a touchdown, 20 for 116 and a touchdown, 4 for 72 and a touchdown. Also in week 5, 2 for 2, 100 yards receiving. Breece Hall's the fucking man. And all the reports on Breece Hall is that he's looking healthy. And boy, he's my guy. I cannot stop drafting Breece Hall. I love him. I'm just such a believer. I was wrong about him last year. I was telling you not to draft Breece Hall, and I think that was not the wise decision. I was proved wrong very quickly, and I do kind of the only reason I got bailed out not endorsing Breece Hall last year was because he got hurt. But we're gonna look for running back value a little bit later. I don't love Christian Watson, but as our wide receiver 3, there is a ton of upside. However, Mike Williams, I think, in the best case scenario, would be that guy. However, he just has so much competition. Jerry Jeudy is, I think, has the clearest path to be a massive target hog with that wide receiver one role in Denver. I've been taking him a lot. I kind of want to limit my exposure to Jeudy a little bit, but I do think he is a little bit safer of a bet in round 4 than Mike Williams, who, let's face it, they drafted Quentin Johnston, who's like almost an exact comp for him. I do worry about Mike Williams a little bit. If Keenan stays healthy, then he's not going to have as big of a role as last year. And I still think Josh Palmer is a legit factor in this offense. They're bringing back Jalen Guyton as well. I mean, I know that's not a scary proposition. Mike Williams is definitely the wide receiver 1 for the Chargers, but I do worry about him a little bit. And if he doesn't give you 20, 15 points, then he's giving you like 2 fucking points. He's brutal sometimes. So I'm just gonna stick with the floor with Jerry Jeudy. I think it's more of a bust-proof pick going with Jeudy over Mike Williams. But yeah, that's my opinion. Fantasy Dog, good call on Taylor. Yeah, I just think he's a little too overvalued. Last year was definitely concerning. But GOAT mode, why is Joe Mixon always going so low? I still think people are concerned that he might get suspended, possibly, given those legal situations. But I don't buy it. I don't think he's actually going to get suspended. I do worry though that they sign Ezekiel Elliott. I think that's the big concern because remember Zeke is a free agent and he played for Ohio State. He might be wanting to come back to Ohio. If anything, he might just be wanting to chase a ring, and the Bengals are definitely the place to do that. One of the top contenders in terms of that argument. So that I think is the only major concern. But if you remove Mixon's 50-point game last year where he had 5 touchdowns, there were some concerning stats for Mixon because, okay, in year, what would it be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At the age of 26, he's entering his 7th year in the league this season. Maybe durability is a concern. He did miss 3 games last season, and a few years ago he missed 10. So that might be a reason. But he had a total of 7 rushing touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns, and 5 of them came in one game. If you're telling me 13 games, he only gives you 4 touchdowns, that is a bit concerning in terms of ceiling. So that, I think, is the argument against Joe Mixon. But for him to go in round 5 is really solid. At the end of round 4, I think, is probably more of a fair bet. So I think the market just hasn't fully acclimated to the fact that he's not getting suspended. I still think that the news, that legal trouble at the beginning of the offseason that dropped his ADP so low, at like I did some of these best ball leagues before the draft, and I swear I got Mixon in like round 8, round 9 a couple of times. So that, I think, was just the main scare that just never fixed itself, and I think that's the main reason. But I do see Mattison in the same tier as Joe Mixon. So if we can get him with the next pick here, that's a player to consider. But he's still going at pick 76. I don't think the market is fully adjusted on him. I do like the ceiling with Aaron Jones. However, I don't think we can replicate a tight end like George Kittle. But sometimes he falls. I'm actually going to go with Brandon Ayuk because there is one crazy stellar value at quarterback that if somehow George Kittle were to fall back to us at pick 64, then we would absolutely target the Brock Purdy, Trey Lance stack in, oh my God, they're going so cheap. Trey Lance at pick 190, Brock Purdy pick 191. Are league winners, absolute league winners. And you don't need Trey Lance to be the starter in San Francisco for him to absolutely pay off for that price. If anything, I think he's going to get traded because the way that John Lynch talks about this roster, it's like so clearly Brock Purdy's job. And they invested so much in drafting Trey Lance that if another team is interested in trading for him and they know they can get it done with Purdy on that rookie contract in the 7th round, why would they not trade him away? So that's who we're hoping for. If Chase Fan does not take him, then I really doubt that team 10 will take him, who took Mark Andrews in round 3. So please, Chase Fan, do not grab George Kittle. If not, we will we'll pivot to Mattison probably because, okay, no, I'm going with George Kittle, assuming he's on the board. This stack would be really, really nice. Yep. And Mattison actually goes up. I think that's the perfect pick by Mackey here. If Kittle was not available, I would probably be going with Mattison. But Kittle is available, and this opens the door for this Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy double stack combo. And you need to stack in this best ball setting. That's kind of the only difference maker that can put you over the top. And remember, from a strategy standpoint, the payout for this tournament, the puppy that we're drafting in right now, is weeks 15, 16, and 17. So if your quarterback plays at an elite level, if the team that you stack the most heavily has a really elite close to the season, then the best route for success is if you also have the receivers who they're throwing those touchdowns to. So, in this scenario, the argument, the prophecy that we are hoping for this team to pay off is if Deebo Samuel, who's going pick 29 third round, either gets hurt or is simply not the player that his ADP suggests he is, then our value on Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle at the 5-6 round turn could have league-winning value in this draft. So that I think is a really, really solid pick. One of the reasons I went Brandon Ayuk over guys like JSN, Marquise Brown, even Chris Godwin has probably a safer path to more targets as the wide receiver one in their offense. But we are playing the strategy with the stack, going Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. But fantasy got Mattison lasted to round 6. Yeah, he did. I'm surprised as well, but his ADP it's only been a few hours. Like, it hasn't been a full day, and it still was listed at pick 76. So 13 spots a full round is still a technical reach. But I think overall people want to see how high he's going to go, as opposed to like pulling the gun on taking him like where they took Joe Mixon, and then like 2 weeks from now kind of regretting it. Like, we saw DeAndre Hopkins rise dramatically, and if he were to sign in, like, I don't know, Cleveland, there's a lot of receivers there. That wouldn't be the best case scenario, like as if he signed in KC and all of a sudden he would fall down. So I think because of that recently just happening, that might be one of the reasons why Mattison may have fallen a little bit in this draft. But I definitely prefer Mattison over Kenneth Walker, over Aaron Jones, as we mentioned. Like I was saying, I think he's in the same tier as Joe Mixon, J.K. Dobbins. And I think Miles Sanders should have been drafted higher as well. If we didn't have Kittle and we wanted to go running back, I would have gone Miles Sanders instead of Mattison. But, okay. Wide receiver is pretty brutal here. Can't say I feel like super confident with any of these receivers. Thankfully, we have 4 that we like a lot. So we're picking 81. I'm interested in Pacheco, but I'm actually going to go with Deshaun Watson. Especially if they get DeAndre Hopkins, then Deshaun Watson's going to look really, really good. And according to reports at training camp, he looks really good so far, light years ahead of where he was last season. Oh, the audio is bad. I apologize. I don't know if it's this cable. I gotta fix something, but this stream does seem to go in and out a little bit, and I get some really hazy audio. I have been noticing that, so I should definitely look into getting another cable, because I think that's what is the problem. But it's okay now. Glad to hear that. Cool. But one benefit of going with Watson here is that we may get ourselves another stack with Elijah Moore. That is a possibility, because we really want to hammer wide receiver as much as possible. But it might behoove us to pivot to running back. The tiers do fall off a bit of a cliff here, and Elijah Moore goes off, so we don't even have that option available to us. And as our wide receiver 5, it's not the end of the world not to have him on our team, but yeah, that's probably the pick. This is the last starting slot that we have yet to address, RB2. We are still missing out on it. So the guys I'd be looking at here would be Rachaad White and David Montgomery. I think I prefer Montgomery in this setting, especially if Jahmyr Gibbs goes down, then Montgomery becomes top 10. But even if he doesn't, there's a scenario where Montgomery scores double-digit touchdowns. And in the last draft, I want to say Jonathan, longtime viewer of the channel, member of the subscriber league, asked me if he was crazy for drafting Montgomery over Jahmyr Gibbs. And while I do think that is not the right way approach to the Detroit backfield. I do think Gibbs is more valuable. There's a very legit argument that Montgomery should actually be considered the more valuable player, because let's just take a look at his contract real quick, remind you of how much they paid him. I want to say $8 million per season. Yes, no, $6 million per season. He got three years, $18 million, $6 million per year. How much of that is fully guaranteed? 8.7. So year 3 is a possible void year. It looks like that would be my guess, but yeah, they might move on from Montgomery after next season. But this year, especially with Gibbs as a rookie, that's probably going to be the best chance for Montgomery to pay off as a big contributor. And I've mentioned this in multiple videos. I really need to link it and share it in the community tab. I will be doing that at the end of this video, but go back to Rich Eisen interview with Dan Campbell. He was just absolutely raving about David Montgomery. He is definitely a strong believer in Montgomery. And last year, there were 25 touchdowns, maybe even 27. I want to say Swift scored 10 touchdowns. Yeah, if Swift scored 10 touchdowns last year, no, he scored 8 last season. So 17 for Jamal Williams, 8 for DeAndre Swift, and then I think Justin Jackson may have scored a couple as well. There were almost 30 touchdowns for the running backs in the Detroit offense. Jared Goff can't score them all himself, and especially with Jameson Williams gonna miss 6 weeks with that suspension. Early in the year, Montgomery could be a big focal point of this offense. Getting him round 8, I think, is absolutely good value. I think I've comfortable taking him in round 7. But I think he's a top 25 running back this season. That floor in a 12-team league is a low end, albeit, but still an RB2. We have him paired with Breece Hall, and that's a pretty solid combo. There's definitely a scenario where David Montgomery absolutely wins us this league. But definitely not what I'm betting on. I'm just banking on the floor. There's good value at the very least, but there is a scenario where he really pops off. But we might consider Tua with this pick. We do have Jalen Waddle. Dak Prescott is also falling. However, I am not a believer in Dak Prescott, going to be completely honest with you. Don't think it's worth it to stack him with CD, even in the 9th round. But he goes off the board, so we're not even open to that possibility. The combination of Deshaun Watson and Tua, I think, is pretty good. And I see you in the comment, you're loving this Monty pick, and you're also vying for Tua as well. I think that's probably where I'm going to go. Oh, yeah, especially with these next 3 picks not having a quarterback. Absolutely the strategy we need to implement, because it's possible we see a run here. It's possible we see 4 quarterbacks go off in the next 6 picks. So we might be still getting our preference at running back in the next round. Oh, yeah, I completely agree. Tua is way better than Prescott. The only argument to be worried about Tua is him going down with injury. And while that's obviously a legit possibility, I might be getting 2 top 5 quarterbacks this season who are going off the board as QB 8 and QB 9, 10, 11, and 12. That is a legitimate possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it is possible to happen. And I mean, we're gambling right now. If you're putting $5 into the puppy draft, you are absolutely telling yourself, I'm probably not going to see this back. I'm pretty much giving it up completely. But boy, there is also some really good value at running back right here, and A.J. Dillon would be my pick. But if he wasn't on the board hypothetically, I might consider Rashad Penny. I think Antonio Gibson is also pretty good. But A.J. Dillon, if Aaron Jones goes down, A.J. Dillon will be a top 15 running back every single week. So we are kind of betting on some injuries in order for the true ceiling to hit. But that's the potential with this team that we're drafting. At the very least, we have a solid floor. Dillon had pretty much the same stats last year as he did 2 years ago. Let's just remind you of A.J. Dillon real quick. But last year, 186 rush attempts. The previous season, 187. His yards per carry fell off slightly, but not like a huge difference, like only 33 yards fewer. And then he had 7 total touchdowns. And the previous season, he had 7 total touchdowns as well. His work in the passing game dropped off a little bit, however. That was a little unfortunate for A.J. Dillon. But look, I feel like this offense is going to lean even more heavily on the run, and a lot of those hiccups early in the season because of the chemistry at wide receiver with Aaron Rodgers last year aren't really going to be the case in Green Bay. It's possible they suck with Jordan Love, but I think they're going to have their game plan way more figured out, and A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones are going to be a more consistent aspect of this offense, and they're going to be more leaned on than they were last year. So, before I forget, there's one other reason why I'm actually really excited about A.J. Dillon. If there's a running back that could be traded this year, like mid-season, I think it would be Aaron Jones. I think he's one of the most appealing trade targets, especially if Jordan Love sucks and the Green Bay Packers go like 1-5 to start this season, because their bye is in week 6, and let's take a look at their schedule real quick while we have time. We're 5 picks away. Yeah, we got time. Okay, if they lose to Chicago, if they lose at Atlanta, if they lose to New Orleans, if they lose to Detroit, and if they lose to Las Vegas, everyone's going to fucking hit the panic button on this season, and Aaron Jones is going to demand a trade. They pay him $12.5 million, and if there's a team that's trying to make a push, maybe their running back goes down, oh my God, everyone would want to trade for Aaron Jones. So there is also a possibility, while it is slim, even if Aaron Jones doesn't get hurt, he might get traded. It might be the case that A.J. Dillon becomes the guy in Green Bay by the end of the season, especially weeks 15, 16, 17, and aging Aaron Jones may get hurt. I think A.J. Dillon has the most value in the month of December for sure. So he can help us win, but thank you, Fantasy Dog. I hope I'm killing this draft. I'm hoping so, but we might want to target some type of stack with Deshaun Watson, possibly. Possible that that's a way to go. I draft Sky Moore so much. It's almost like concerning. I've literally taken him like 14, 15 times. But that's why I'm going to pivot to Rashee Rice if I am going to go with a Chiefs receiver here. It's tempting to go with the floor of Dalton Schultz at tight end. But yeah, I'm going to go Rashee Rice. I normally go with Sky Moore. He's in year 2. Rashee Rice is in year 1. But Rashee Rice profiles as more of a red zone target. And there's just so many variables in the Chiefs offense. Like anyone can hit any single week. It's definitely just a best ball type of pick. And yeah, the main reason I'm taking Rashee Rice is for exposure reasons. But I do prefer Sky Moore in general. So if you are debating between these two Chiefs receivers at the 11-12 round turn, then normally I go with Sky Moore. But that would be my logic for going with Rashee Rice. I just take Sky Moore way too much. But Mingo's still on the board. We could pair up Sky Moore and Rashee Rice, but we only have 3 running backs. It might be worth considering. I actually love Tank Bigsby, going to be honest with you. Tank Bigsby is really, really interesting. We're reaching on him a little bit. But nah, I'm going to go Jonathan Mingo. Yeah, we're just going to shore up another receiver. Another rookie that has a lot of potential, especially late. Fantasy Dog, what am I missing on Sky Moore? Heard too much negativity. I have not. Maybe I'm not. My head is in the sand on Sky Moore. Let's go to NBC Sports Edge. See if they have any news on Sky Moore. But The Athletic's Nate Taylor writes Sky Moore is projected as the starter in 3 wide sets next to Kadarius Toney and MVS. So he would be above Rashee Rice. But Chiefs coach Andy Reid, back in February, though, said both Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore will probably have bigger roles next season. I see Sky Moore as this year's Mecole Hardman. Like, I think Toney has the better shot to be the one, but that's kind of like the Juju role from last year. And Mecole Hardman had some really, really solid games, used all around. I mean, he scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. If anything, he has a leg up on Rashee Rice for like knowledge of the playbook and chemistry with Mahomes. I loved him coming out of college, to be honest with you. I don't think he's a player to be super worried about, especially if Toney goes down. I think he would have a bit more of an edge as the wide receiver 2 than Rashee Rice. But they're both like hit or miss. They're both, hard to predict. But MVS is going later. I see your point there. Yeah, Toney. I don't know if Toney's a lock. He's just going so high. Like, if he works out, he's definitely worth it. But if he doesn't work out, there's no room for error at his ADP. In this draft, Kadarius Toney was pick. Where is he? 77. That's a little bit high for me. Like, I think the receivers in round 7 are really hard to trust. The one I only kind of trust is Jahan Dotson. But I think there's just going to be so many boom-bust weeks with Gabe Davis, Kadarius Toney, Quentin Johnston, even Brandon Cooks. They're super touchdown dependent. That's the problem. Once you hit round 7, there is a massive tier break at the receiver position, and you're hoping that Toney claims that wide receiver 1 role and has like a dominant 100-plus targets. But it's possible that he gets hurt again. He has not been a safe bet to stay healthy. There is a lot of risk with Kadarius Toney. Remember Hardman's run last year, Toney this year. See, that's where I think that's who I think Sky Moore is. I think Toney would be the Juju, where Sky Moore would be the Mecole. But we have different opinions, and we will see what happens. It's possible that we get Tank Bigsby falling back. Damn it, we do not. We do not. So that's unfortunate for us. Singletary's not bad. Zeke is not bad. But Higbee has fallen a few spots, and these teams need a backup tight end as well. So we're going to go with Higbee. Fantasy Dog, thanks for the opinion, though. I honestly, I need a reason to move off of Sky Moore a little bit, and I have been taking him way too much. I value a differing opinion because sometimes I feel like I might have like an echo chamber going on sometimes. But I was really high on Sky Moore last year, so it's possible that my bias is just coming back around, and I just want that pick to be right. But at the very least, it's definitely worth spreading your exposure around. And Rashee Rice does have some appeal. Let's take a look at him real quick before our next pick. We're almost on the clock, but Rashee Rice is pretty solid. Ran a 4.5, 6 feet, 200 pounds. He is taller. He is a little bit more built than Sky Moore. So for those reasons, he might get on the field a little bit more because he can, block down the field, especially if they call a run play. They want someone further down the field to set up those blocks. But I'm probably going to go with Devin Singletary here. I don't think Jalen Hyatt is worth this pick. I don't think Jaden Reed is a safe investment. And Marvin Mims, if we don't have a correlation with like Russell Wilson, I don't think is worth it. We already have Judy. But yeah, I'm going to go Devin Singletary. And we're just going to have to hope and pray that if we need him in this roster, that Damian Pierce goes down. That's kind of the only route for success, but Singletary should contribute a little bit more than I think the average backup handcuff in this range. Like, I think Singletary is definitely more valuable than Chase Brown on a week-to-week basis. They're obviously both touchdown injury dependent, but I think Singletary is going to get a higher floor, given he's more of a veteran with some more established experience in the league. But Jacksonville Insider said Etienne makes mistakes between tackles. Higbee is great pick. Higbee is so valuable this late. There's such a narrow target share in the Rams offense, and until he got hurt, he was a top 10 tight end last season. Sorry about the audio. Yeah, it does happen. I do need to replace this cable. That's for sure. Thanks for reminding me about it. I always forget about it as it's happening, as I'm recording. But no, that's definitely going to be on my list for things to do. Going to fix this audio, get a better cable. Thankfully, it only lasts about 10 seconds or so, but I know it's not pleasant. I know it's not fun to hear that shit when you're trying to pay attention. But we will need one more running back, and I love Zeke Elliott going this late. But remember, we mentioned we are looking for the San Francisco stack. So especially with a quarterback like Tua, a guy that could get injured, could go down. Honestly, week 1 of the season, it's definitely worth grabbing a third quarterback in this scenario. And Brock Purdy had a top 15 floor. He was really, really good at for fantasy purposes. I forgot what I said. Like, Brock Purdy was getting you like 250 yards passing and 2 touchdowns on a consistent basis when he was carrying the Niners to that 7-0 NFC Championship run. So we're going to be looking for Brock Purdy, and I'm probably going to take him with pick 184. It's possibly falls to us at pick 201, but I do not want to get sniped. So one of these next 2 picks is going to be Brock Purdy. We do not need Trey Lance in this scenario because we already have Deshaun and Tua. So that I'm not too worried about. I also think Trey Lance is the most valuable if he gets traded. I just don't think he's going to steal that job from Brock Purdy. That's just not how I feel about the situation. They're going to hype him up. They're definitely going to hype up Trey Lance, but that's just to inflate his trade value. But we're getting towards the end of this draft, so I'm going to pack myself a bowl. Because I mentioned it last time, and I didn't do it. I got distracted. But that's the tradition. We started this draft at 4:20 or so we should light up the bong before it's over. But yeah, I'm definitely going to take Zeke most likely with this pick. Zeke gonna score a lot of touchdowns this season. I know he hasn't signed yet, but Zeke is very safe. You know, I never take Jaden Reed. He's falling fucking 20 picks here. So I might want to consider it. But I don't think he's like league winning. I think Zeke is a bit more of a league winner. And maybe we can get better value on Jaden Reed. But I'm not going to take him here given the picks here. Like, Mackey went with running back. They're 4th, and I think they're probably going to take another one. Jaden Reed goes off, so yeah. Oh my, a bong. I'm a teetotaler when it comes to herb. You're too funny. Yeah, that's kind of the norm here on the live streams. If you check out one of the videos, my intro is the bottom of this bong. I'm not going to show it to you because I'm just going to pour bong water all over myself. I'm not going to do that. But Yeah, just take my word for it. It's on the bottom. But now we're on the clock. And I'm not going to take the chance that he does not come back around. We're going to grab our boy, Brock Purdy. And we have the 49ers stack with Purdy, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle. I think that's the most valuable way to approach it. I don't think Debo is really worth the third round pick. There's not much room for error. And while he does have a higher ceiling, on a per game basis, he was actually almost identical to Brandon Ayuk for fantasy purposes. So I have actually never drafted Debo in a single draft this season. I am not exposed to him once, and the injury risk makes me concerned, and the third round ADP is not ideal. I'd prefer him in the fourth, but I think both Debo and Ayuk are actually round 4 or 5 turns. I think they're both worth about a top 50 overall pick. But I skipped a comment. Nobody likes Wilson. Why? Because between the tackles, he is the one. I assume you mean Jeff Wilson? That's who I think you're talking about. If you're not, then correct me, please. But no, there's a legitimate argument that he's going to be the goal line back because Devin Achane is not built to be that guy. He's, I want to say like 185, 180. And Raheem Mostert almost always gets hurt at the age of 31. Probably going to go down as he has in the past. Last year was a fluke for a full season. That's not something to expect from Raheem Mostert on a consistent basis. So Jeff Wilson normally stays more healthy, and this offense does have a heavy hot hand approach. But today especially, given the news of Dalvin Cook being let go by the Vikings, I am very worried about any Miami running back right now, because Miami, up until the Broncos rumors, was the front runner to trade for him. And now that it's up in the air, I think they're going to make the highest bid. I think Miami could use him the most. Maybe Denver's that desperate, but Dalvin Cook has been practicing, like training on his own in South Beach. So that's a connection right there. Maybe he doesn't want to move away. I think he may have gone to the University of Miami. I might be wrong. I might just be completely pulling that out of thin air. But if it's not Miami, then I think it would be Denver or Buffalo. If he goes to Buffalo, then he'd be playing with his brother, James Cook, and that would be really interesting. There was a lot of family in the crowd during the Vikings Buffalo game last year, and it's possible that just for that pure reason, like I want to play with my brother, that's pretty special. Not many players are able to do that. Dalvin Cook can technically go wherever he wants right now, and maybe he goes to Buffalo. But if he doesn't, I think the front runner is probably Miami. Probably going to go Darius Slayton. We only have 6 receivers, and we went so top heavy. That's why we moved off the position, but I definitely need some to fill out this roster. And Darius Slayton is actually the highest paid wide receiver in New York. I've mentioned this in a previous video, but I'm going to bring it up again because not everyone watches to the end of these drafts. And if you are, then I think Darius Slayton is a absolute steal at his ADP. Much better draft selection than Jalen Hyatt. He's getting paid $6 million per year, which isn't like amazing for a wide receiver, but that's higher than any other player that they have. And he has a connection with Daniel Jones that goes back like, 4 years now? They are the only 2 players in this offense, I guess, other than like Sterling Shepard, that have a ton of receptions between the two. So Darius Slayton, I think, will be one of the 2 starting receivers opposite Wan'Dale Robinson, who also I think is a steal at his ADP, pick 167. But if there's one concern, it would be the fact that Darren Waller's coming in to New York, and that could fuck things up. But last year, we saw a ton of production from both Slayton, Richie James, and Isaiah Hodgins at the same time at the end of the year. I love Slayton. He is a bust-proof selection in round 17. Definitely worth your money as your wide receiver 7. But we have 2 tight ends, George Kittle and Tyler Higbee. We're not going to go tight end. We have 5 running backs, Breece Hall, Dave Montgomery, Dylan, Singletary, and Zeke. We might consider one more. You know, actually, we mentioned at the top of this video when we were breaking down Mattison, one reason to be concerned about him is that maybe it's more of a committee. Maybe Dwayne McBride is a legitimate option. But he is a 7th-round pick at the end of the day, and I'm not too excited about that. But Paris Campbell is the 2nd highest paid Giant wide receiver. And if Slayton's not going to pay off, then Campbell is much more likely to do that. He would be the slot receiver who has had some heavy games of big production. Fuck it. We're just going to go Darius Slayton, Paris Campbell as our wide receiver 7 and 8. And that wraps up this mock draft for us. So let's remind you of the roster. In round 1 at pick 9, we went with CeeDee Lamb. We took him over Eckler and Bijan. At least on Underdog, where you have to start 3 wide receivers, I believe that's the way to go. I would also take CeeDee Lamb over Travis Kelce as well as Christian McCaffrey. So my number 7 overall player, I get at number 9. I'm happy with that. And then Jalen Waddle at 16, I think is like very fair value. However, it's mainly because he represents the tier break at wide receiver 11. I don't think you can get anyone later in the draft that represents the guarantees and the ceiling, the value of Jalen Waddle in round 2. Round 3, we had Breece Hall, who fell a little bit to us, but I got to be honest with you, I don't understand why. I think people are really overblowing his injury, and he's really deserving of a 2nd-round pick, in my opinion. So love him as the RB1. Then we went with Jerry Jeudy as the wide receiver 3. Really safe floor with Jeudy, and especially with Sean Payton at head coach, he could be the next Mike Williams. They picked up his 5th-year option. They do believe in him as the number 1 receiver in Denver. Then we went with Ayuk and George Kittle for the San Francisco stack, just filling out the wide receiver position. Then we went with Deshaun Watson as our QB1, followed by David Montgomery as our running back 2, hoping for a little bit of a break if Jahmyr Gibbs is not the player he's projected to be. But let's just take a look at... Oh, wait, no. I liked how it was set up. Like this, yeah. No, let's just do it the other way. Yeah, let's stick with this. Tua, our quarterback 2. Definitely a great ceiling. A.J. Dillon, our RB3. More of a floor play. We're hoping for the best. But then Rashee Rice and Jonathan Mingo took a couple shots on some rookies. Hopefully they pay off late in the season. But then Tyler Higbee's our backup tight end. Devin Singletary, our RB4, followed by Ezekiel Elliott at RB5. Brock Purdy's our quarterback 3. And Darius Slayton, Paris Campbell is the wide receiver 7-8 combo in New York. And that rounds out this draft. So ABA to BU Hall. I imagine... You mean Breece Hall? I got to be honest with you, man. I do not understand that sentence. So maybe you can clarify. Maybe you're still watching, but I think that's going to be it for this video. And feel free to drop a comment down below, and I will respond to it on the original video. But yeah, that's this draft. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time around. But my name's Adam Riancho, and thanks for watching Nice and Blunt.